Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of Auto Connect Juxtaposition. And rarely at Auto Connect Juxtaposition do we compare and contrast vehicles from the same manufacturer. But in this case, we are comparing and contrasting two SUVs from the same manufacturer. Why are we doing this? Because there is a price difference between the cost of these two cars, but 90% of the features between these two vehicles are actually similar. But the cost implication is 1 million Kenya shillings in acquiring these two. So the question in this episode of Auto Connect Juxtaposition is the Toyota Fortuner value for money? Is it worth buying over the Toyota Prado? Also, what features do I get on the Prado that are not on the Fortuner, and do they justify the Kenya shillings 1 million difference? And we are doing this because Auto Connect is the only car channel that will guarantee you an alluring motor vehicle experience. I'll be your host, Eric Wokabi, Eric with a CK. And remember, you can follow me at a personal level on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok as well. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. On this review, we will be comparing and contrasting the Toyota Fortuner J150 against the Toyota Prado GDJ150. Now, both vehicles are year of manufacture 2018. They are 2018 models. But why would we compare and contrast these vehicles? The primary thing is because of what they have to offer in terms of features and performance, and also the cost implications, because the difference between these two cars is 1 million Kenya shillings. Now, we borrowed these two SUVs from Carplicity, and we really would like to give thanks to Carplicity for their continuous support on this review. Pia, kama unataka kuona gari from Carplicity, they sell vehicles across the board. Their number is in the description below. Unaweza pigia David Carplicity ama Kevin Carplicity and ask for the vehicles that they have in stock. And if you call them and tell them umetuma hapo na Eric with a CK, they will give you an Auto Connect discount. So usisahau kuulizia hiyo discount. Now, back to these two vehicles. So, for 1 million shillings, is what the Prado has over the Fortuner worth that price difference? Because 1 million Kenya shillings is a lot of money. Now, I would like to start this review by discussing what is on the Toyota Fortuner. Now, this is the J150 Toyota Fortuner, and a very important thing I would like you to take into account is that this is a South African spec, meaning it has been tweaked to match or to adapt to the African terrain. The GDJ150 over there, the Prado, is a Japanese spec. So there will be a significant difference in the components that are in the engine. So as part of the tropicalization, the Fortuner comes with a nudge bar. Not all of them come with this, but this is a good aftermarket product or a good aftermarket tool for guys who go off-roading. What powers up the Toyota Fortuner? Before we go to that, let's talk about the prima facie, the first impression. What is the Fortuner? The Fortuner basically is a Toyota Hilux. Yes, it's an SUV built on the Toyota Hilux. In fact, the global market for pickup-based SUVs has really grown, and these pickup-based SUVs include the Toyota Fortuner, which is based on the Toyota Hilux, the Isuzu MUX, which is based on the Isuzu D-Max. We also have the Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, which is based on the Mitsubishi L200 pickup, or the Mitsubishi Triton, and we have the Ford Everest, which is based on the Ford Ranger. So this is the Hilux built in an SUV package, and this is a mid-size SUV. The Fortuner is a rather awkward product on Toyota's lineup, and that is why in the grey market, sales of the Toyota Fortuner have continued to cannibalize the sales of the Toyota Prado 150. Why is this? You know, if you look at Mitsubishi with the Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, if you look at Ford with the Ford Everest, if you look at Nissan with the Nissan Terra, and if you look at now Isuzu with the MUX. Now Isuzu, Ford, Nissan and Mitsubishi do not have an SUV that is close to their pickup based counterparts or pickup based SUVs. Now for Toyota, there is the Prado that is very close to the Toyota Fortuner, because these two are mid-sized SUVs. Tuko pamoja hadi hapo? Now let's look at Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi discontinued the Pajero. So the Pajero Sport is no longer a threat to the Pajero. Ford does not have a mid-size SUV apart from the Everest. Or maybe if it's there, it's for the other markets. And same to the other competitors. For Nissan, they also don't have a mid-size SUV. And also for Isuzu, they don't have a mid-sized SUV. So the pickup-based SUVs make sense to them. But for Toyota, they have the Prado, which is almost directly competing to the Fortuner. But there are significant differences, and I want to start by talking about what is under the hood of the Toyota Fortuner. So what is under the hood of the 2018 Toyota Fortuner? Now, you can get a variety of engines on the Fortuner, but the most common one will be either the 1G DFTV or the 2G DFTV. Now, let's talk about the 1G DFTV engine. Well, it's a 2.8 liter turbocharged diesel engine. Now, it features common rail direct injection. It has a variable geometry turbo. And now the most important thing about it, it's that it is known for fuel economy. It can push all the way to 14 kilometers to the liter of diesel. Now, it succeeded the 1KD FTV engine. And the major differences between the 1KD and the 2GD are actually two of them. One is displacement, because the 1KD has 3 liters of displacement, the 1GD has 2.8 liters of displacement. The other thing is that the 1KD was belt driven, but the 1GD is actually chain driven. So that is another significant difference. When Toyota were developing the GD series of engines, the GD6 series of engines, they employed a technology that is called STEC. Now, STEC in full stands for economy with superior thermo-efficient combustion. So that is the game changer. The thermal efficiency on the GD series of engines is actually amazing. Let's go to the power figures. The 1GD FTV on the Fortuner and on the Prado will give you the same power figures. Now on the Fortuner, you're getting 200 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque, and on the Prado you will still get the same 200 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque. Are we together up to that point? And these two vehicles, these are power ratings or power figures for the 2018 to 2020 models. So the 2020 models and beyond can give different power figures, but now for these two you get 200 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque. Even the Hilux, on which the Fortuner is based on, you will still get the same 200 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque. So on the Fortuner, how is power transmitted to the wheels? And this forms a significant difference between the Fortuner and the Prado. Now, on the Fortuner, we have the transmission that is called the AC60 automatic transmission. Now, on the Fortuner, you can get it with the AC60F or the AC60E. And it's a 6-speed automatic transmission with selectable 4-wheel drive. So the Fortuner is more or less, we can call it a part-time 4-wheel drive because you have to engage 4-wheel drive. However, on the J150, you have full-time 4-wheel drive. So that forms a significant difference between these two vehicles. Remember I told you that these are South African spec. I would like us to move over to the Toyota Prado so that I can show you something very interesting. So this is the same engine. It's still the 1GD FTV, 2.8 liters of displacement, variable geometry turbo, and the engine looks much more or less the same. There is the question of the locally assembled or the Toyota Prados that are sold locally and or even from South Africa, the VXs, VXLs, why they have that whistling sound. The reason they have that whistling sound and their Japanese counterparts do not is because they don't have EGRs, they don't have DPFs, and they don't have catalytic converters. So that's why there is that whistling sound from those VXLs and those VXs. But now on the TZG or the TX, the Japanese specs, they feature these from 2015. They will feature some of these technologies to try and meet Euro 6 standards. So what are these technologies? Number one is the use of catalytic converters. Now, for the diesel Prados and most diesel vehicles, the catalytic converters are not your conventional catalytic converters. They are what are called diesel oxidation converters or catalysts. Actually, they are called diesel oxidation catalysts. These catalytic converters that are used on the Toyota Prado, the Japanese spec, and other diesel vehicles, they are what are called the diesel oxidation catalysts. So they are maintenance free and they are quite easy to use, and they don't require a lot of maintenance. So they are pretty good down there on the exhaust pipe. And in fact, another thing is that they are inexpensive. They are not very, very, very expensive, but si mnajua Kenya venye watu wanakatanga hizi makatalytic converter. But okay, the materials that are used to make these catalytic converters, they are in very high demand in other markets, and that is why catalytic converters are often stolen. Now, the second technology is the use of EGR, exhaust gas recirculation. The third technology is the use of the DPF, the diesel particulate filter that regenerates in cycles when you drive the car for a while. That's why you're recommended, if you have a diesel vehicle that has a DPF, drive it at highway speeds every once in a while to try and regenerate the DPF. And if you're in situations that do not allow for that, you can regenerate the DPF manually. Now, the last technology is this, what we have here, and that is what is called selective catalyst reduction, or the use of diesel exhaust fluid, DEF, commonly known as AdBlue. So tuko pamoja hadi hapo. So if this was a South African spec, we would not have AdBlue on it. We would probably not have an EGR. And the good thing about it is that we would have that whistling sound when you throttle on this Prado. And that is what we enjoy from these Prados that are mostly used by the government or even by organizations that are locally assembled or sold locally by our good friends at Sifao Mobility or imported from South Africa. So I hope mmeelewa kwa nini kuna tofauti ya hiyo between this and this. The other common thing between these vehicles is the suspension. Now at the front you get double wishbone suspension and you get solid axle, or what guys call the tube, ama ile diff, a solid rear axle. However, there is a significant difference between these two vehicles. Now, this one is conventionally coil sprung, so it runs on coil springs. Now, with the Prado, it depends on the Prado you're getting. Now, as standard, you might get KDSS, kinetic dynamic suspension system. If you buy higher trims, you might get air suspension at the rear, like the VX, the VXL, and the TZG that can inaweza panda na inaweza shuka. So you can adjust the rear ground clearance of the Prado if you get the TZG, the VX, and the VXL. However, you do not get that on the Toyota Fortuner. So those are some of the features that we get between the two. So up to now, the two notable features are, one, full-time four-wheel drive on the Prado, and selectable four-wheel drive on the Toyota Fortuner. Now let's take a look at the interior and see what differences do we have between these two vehicles. Now the interior of the Fortuner and the Prado, the interior quality between the two is more or less the same. Leather interior, the normal Toyota aesthetics. But let's get into the details. So remember I told you that with the Fortuner, you have to engage 4-wheel drive manually. So if you look at this knob, you have 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low. So you cannot run on full-time 4-wheel drive on this. So most of the time you'll be running on 2-wheel drive, but when need be, you will have to engage 4-wheel drive. Okay, this is both an advantage and a disadvantage. Because if you're running on 2-wheel drive, you're going to enjoy significantly lower fuel consumption. Yes, because there is reduced resistance. But there comes a time, and we are going to demonstrate this, where a Prado will negotiate a corner very well. And you know, with this solid rear axles, once one wheel does not touch the ground, it automatically sends this car into slippage. But now, if you have full-time 4-wheel drive, you will not have to stop to engage 4-wheel. We will demonstrate that, and you'll see how this comes in. And in fact, as I talk about this, see what happens on the screen as these two vehicles negotiate a tricky bit with uneven ground, and see why full-time 4-wheel drive might actually be beneficial to the Prado. But that does not mean that the Fortuner does not have as good capabilities as the Prado. In fact, they are almost equal. In terms of safety, you also get cut-in airbags all around. You get, in some Fortuners, you get knee airbags. So the safety ratings of the Fortuner are quite good as compared to those of the Prado. But people talk about the stability of these vehicles, and the fact that these vehicles, like the Prado, has been associated with rolling, it is purely out of reckless driving, because remember, these are cars that have relatively high center of gravity. So you cannot corner with them like a sports car. So if you roll a Prado, in fact, Prados and Fortuners they are well made. So if you roll them, it's basically out of recklessness and driving that is not very intelligent, because as a good driver, you should know the limits of your vehicle. You cannot corner. You know, Subarus have a lower center of gravity. Now, these cars have a higher center of gravity. As physics dictates, you cannot have cornering ability like that of a Subaru with a Prado or with a Fortuner. So, wase waache recklessness. Prados they are quite well built, especially these ones that have KDSS. Now, on the Fortuner, you do not get KDSS. So, you do have features that you will get, 4x4 features that you will get on the Prado, on the Fortuner. Number one is this, downhill assist. So, this is what you engage when you're going downhill, and it brakes the vehicle for you, especially in slippery situations, whether muddy, whether with loose chipping, or whether rocky. Downhill assist will help you go down in the slowest speeds possible without using your brakes, your physical brakes, because it utilizes the ABS and ESP traction control to try and keep the vehicle well planted to the ground without unnecessarily swaying around, like what would happen if you used your brakes. Now, the second feature is the diff lock. Now, the Toyota Fortuner features a rear diff lock, and this is a feature that you will also get on the Prado, but some Prados will feature 2 diff locks, the rear and the center. These are the Kakadus, the VXs, and the VXL. Now, traction control is almost standard. You get 2 driving modes on the Toyota Fortuner. You have Eco mode and Power mode. Now, what Power mode does, it holds the revs much longer, giving the vehicle ample torque, and this is used for maybe when you want to have some fun, or when you're overtaking or going up steep inclines. On both models, you get a manual handbrake and plenty of space. Now, one thing I'll tell you is that the Prado has more space compared to the Fortuner. In fact, that is a place where the Prado wins in terms of space. Now, both the Fortuner and the Prado feature 3 rows of seats, meaning they come in 7-seater configurations. Now, for the Prado, you might get some 5-seater configuration, but for the Fortuner, it has a 7-seater configuration. But on both, the last row of seats is very uncomfortable. So personally, I do not see the sense or the need for having a 7-seater SUV. Nikitaka 7-seater unaweza nunua Noah. But anyway, ama ununue basi if you have more passengers. But anyway, let's look at it this way. Maybe it suits the need for people who have large families and they want to go off-roading, but that rarely happens. Anyway, they are practical enough. Other features that you're going to get on the Fortuner that might be on the Prado: one, you have paddle shifts, you have cruise control, and you have steering controls for ease and convenience of operating the infotainment system. Another thing is you got dual zone AC. Yes, both for the driver side and the passenger side. That's a 2-zone climate control. Also, you have AC vents for the guys at the back on the second row of seats. The vents are up here. Very unconventional place. But anyway, this is a pickup. Unajua ingekuwa in its natural state, not an mid-size SUV state, AC ya wase wa nyuma ingekuwa literally AC juu wako nje. Anyway, these are Hilux, but good work Toyota. It's actually a very stout, it's a well-built mid-size SUV, and you also get a very good sound system. In fact, the sound system on the Fortuner is quite commendable. Now let's look at the interior of the Toyota Prado. Inside the Toyota Prado, you have more space. It's more luxurious. Even the feel, you have a feel of luxury. But there is something I still want to emphasize. This is a Japanese spec TX. Now, TZGs will have more controls here, like adjustable, height control. If you have air suspension at the back, they might have 2 diff locks. Now this one has 1, but okay, more or less the same, because we are looking at a price comparison. Now the TZGs and the VXLs will be way more expensive. Tuko pamoja hadi hapo, but let's use the TX and the TXL as a major point of comparison. So what does the Prado win, or where does the Prado win? Number one is in terms of space. You have ample space on the first row of seats, the second row of seats, and even the third row of seats. You also get dual zone AC on the Prado. You get steering controls, cruise control, but I do not get paddle shifts, the paddle shifts that I have on the Fortuner. However, there in some Prados you will get them. Tuko pamoja hadi hapo, because the Prado has so many trim levels. In Kenya, if you are buying a Prado, you will either buy a TX, a TXL, a TZG, a VX, a VXL, a Kakadu. We need to do an episode to try and define all these trims and how different they are. Now, what about features? Well, steering control standard. Cruise control, just like what you would have. Now, since this is a Japanese spec, it has these cameras over here, and these are for lane departure assist, collision prevention. So the Fortuner does not have that because it's an African spec. Yes, I wouldn't want to call it poverty spec because it wins over this in some other aspects, but for African trim vehicles, I don't know why we are deprived of some of these features. Anyway, in Africa, I think some of these features would not be very important because, anyway, that's a story for another day. 4-wheel drive features, you have downhill assist on this one, and you have a diff lock. But the major difference between the Fortuner and the Prado is the 4-wheel drive knob. Now, on the 4-wheel drive knob on the Toyota Prado, you only have H4 and L4, meaning right now it's in 4 high and you can only switch it to 4 low. And that is because the Toyota Prado J150 has a 6-speed automatic transmission and full-time 4-wheel drive. Tuko pamoja? Fortuner, part-time 4-wheel drive, lazima you engage 4-wheel, but Prado you have full-time 4-wheel drive, and you are going to demonstrate what the advantage of actually having a full-time 4-wheel drive. But the beauty of it, or rather the beauty of it is that even with the Fortuner you can engage 4-wheel drive. But the advantage of full-time 4-wheel drive is that it gives you maximum traction even when you have, or when you're in for surprises. For instance, you might be driving down a trail, then there is a corner that has uneven ground, and the moment you just approach that corner with the Prado, you will have maximum traction because of full-time 4-wheel drive. But on the Fortuner, you might experience a lot of wheel spin, because if you have not engaged 4 high on the Fortuner, it means you'll be going through that trail in 2-wheel drive mode. Tuko pamoja? We are going to demonstrate that. But before then, I want to show you another button. This button over here and it's normally on Prados. It's called the second start button. Now, what does the second start button do? Most people ask this question. Now, the second start button is when you want to start the vehicle in second gear or in gear number 2. When might you want to start the vehicle in gear number 2? Supposing you're in a place that is very, very, very slippery, it will make more sense to reduce the amount of wheel spin. Like for example, uko kwa mlima na iko na maram and you want to start the vehicle, or you're in slippery grass, yeah, you might want to use second start to reduce the wheel spin from your vehicle. So that is the purpose of the second start button, to start the Prado in second gear and not in first gear. Are we together? Sawa sawa. Now, okay, I think we should demonstrate the use of having full-time four-wheel drive as opposed to part-time four-wheel drive.
Nice.
One thing I would like to demonstrate is, you see, with the Prado J150, the tailgate opens sideways. And this can be inconveniencing when it comes to, you know, tight spaces. And even in some cases when it comes to off-roading or going to extreme off-road. But anyway, it's good, only that it takes up a lot of space opening it sideways. One thing you have to note about these two SUVs is that as long as you have the third row of seats not retracted, you will not have any space to carry your luggage. Tuko pamoja? So itabidi umebebea mizigo juu kama mbukinya. But on the Prado, you can retract them electronically, like that, with the push of a button. Unateremsha tu kidogo kidogo. So you don't have to do a lot of work trying to retract them. And once you only running with 2 rows of seats, you have ample space for cargo. Now let's look at the Fortuner. The Fortuner has 3 rows of seats. It has a provision for 7 seats and all of them are leather. But the third row of seats is quite cramped up, and you cannot retract it electronically. In fact, you have to hang them on the sides of the trunk space. So also the way these seats are set up, it's also inconveniencing because it eats up on luggage space. Without this, you have very good luggage space, but as long as they are here, the luggage space is not, it eats up in the luggage space. So for you to have ample luggage space is buying a Toyota Fortuner that has 2 rows of seats. So naweza sema hii third row of seats kwa Fortuner ilikuwa kuforce issues, because even when sitting, I don't want to sit on them because they are very uncomfortable. So you have to take my word that these seats are not comfortable, the third row of seats. Also, the good thing is that the tailgate of the Toyota Fortuner opens up, inafunguanga juu. So it is easier to handle and easier to operate in tight spots compared to that of the Prado that opens sideways. So does it make sense buying a Toyota Prado for around 1 million shillings more compared to the Toyota Fortuner. Well, if you're buying the Fortuner from Carplicity, it will go for around 6.2 million Kenya shillings. But the Prado, the 2018 Prado, will go for around 7.2 million Kenya shillings. So there is a price difference of 1 million Kenya shillings. But does that justify the features? So what differences have we found? The Prado is a bit more spacious. It has full-time four-wheel drive. I think those are the significant difference. And okay, aesthetics wise, you can get, with some trims of the Prado, you can get a sunroof. Now with the Fortuner, it does not feature KDSS suspension. It has suspension that is rather stiff but comfortable enough for daily use. But in terms of four-wheel drive capabilities, these cars are equally equal, only that the Prado has an edge higher because of the full-time four-wheel drive, unlike the Fortuner that you have to engage electronically. But the other things like the diff lock, the downhill assist, the 6-speed automatic transmission, both giving you the same power output, I believe the Fortuner will continue to cannibalize the sales of the Toyota Prado simply because of the price justification. Because if you're buying these for $1 million less, the extra features that you will get on the Prado are actually negligible. Only that the Prado is a bit bigger compared to the Fortuner, but $1 million bob in terms of difference, yes, most people will actually prefer to buy the Fortuner over the Toyota Prado, because the Toyota Fortuner, in spite of the fact that it's based on the Toyota Hilux, it has equally good four-wheel drive capabilities, same power figures as a Prado. It is quite spacious as well. If you're running the first and the second row of seats, third row wachana nayo. So it's a good vehicle. In terms of reliability, these vehicles are very reliable. Cost of maintenance, maintaining a Fortuner is the same as maintaining a Toyota Hilux. Technical expertise imejaa hapa Kenya. So that is why the price justification is the reason why the sales of the Toyota Fortuner will continue to eat into the sales of the Toyota Prado. But I'll give you a disclaimer. If the prices of these vehicles are pegged on the year of manufacture 2018, and if you're buying them as 0 mileage, the price of the Fortuner and the price of the Prado are worlds apart. So the Fortuner will be cheaper, the Prado will be more expensive, but that is in the 0 mileage market. But in the grey market, whereby we buy cars that have been pre-owned in other countries, like this one is pre-owned from South Africa, this one is pre-owned from Japan. Now the prices, this one will make more sense to a bigger population. I've been your host, Eric Okabi, Eric with a CK. Remember, we offer services such as pre-purchase inspection. Na huwa tunasema usinunue gari kama mbuzi, hata mbuzi mtu huangalia meno. So if you're in need of pre-purchase inspection services, the number is in the description hapo chini. Pia, you can view these cars from Carplicity, or any other car you need. Number ya Kevo Carplicity na David Carplicity ziko hapo kwa the description below. I hope this has been an insightful review. Please remember to subscribe to this channel. Also share this video so that it can reach many people who might be in need of this comparison between the Toyota Prado and the Toyota Fortuner.